Alright, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. So, this is the first of our art histories that you're going to have to answer questions about. So, the questions that you have to answer, you can find that, of course, when you opened your document, you could see the things that we're trying to answer, right? So, the question is about the French Revolution, and that it's about three different groups of people, and you're going to have to explain who these groups of people are. And then also I want you to be able to name some of the themes, so what Rococo art is all about, right? And that is what I'll explain to you, and I'll show you lots and lots of pictures. Okay, I am very excited. Here we go. So we're going to start in the year 1720, and we're going to start in France. And why do we start in France? Because in this time period, France is the most powerful European nation. So you can even say the most powerful nation in the Western world, right? Okay, so we're going to start in 1720 and we're going to stop just before the First World War, right? Now, by looking at all the different art, we sort of can understand how people lived, right? And we can see how they spent their time, we can see how they developed political models, understand the beliefs and values of European and ultimately Western civilization that we live in today, right? Okay, here we go. So, by looking at the different styles that developed during these years, uh, sorry, art is a window portal into the past. Okay, so every type of art is a reaction against art or civilization or things that came before, right? So it's always trying to react against current issues and things that were before. Art is always trying to move forward and it's always a reaction against the past. So you can use art for to teach people things, to inspire things, to make light of things or ridicule things, to explain things, to dream things, to remember things, to warn things, or to just simply show off, right? Now, the type of art that we're going to start with is called Rococo art. And Rococo art is art that is specifically only for one group of people. And this art is for the rich aristocracy. Now, I'm going to have to explain to you super quickly what the aristocracy is, and I will do that, right? So, I've told you before, in the videos before, that in the Middle Ages, we have the following system, right? On top is a king. Underneath the king, we have the church and the lords and the ladies, right? And they basically control all the land, those three groups. Then underneath in the bottom, you can see over here, that is the normal people or the serfs. Now, this has not yet really changed up until the year 1720. We're still living in a similar model, but it's slightly different, so I'll explain. So we used to call the king, but now we can say a king is a monarch, right? Then the people of the church, that is these guys, we call those people the clergy, so those are the people of the church. Then the people who had the tiny castles, the lords and the ladies, of course, they still marry with other lords and ladies, so that is still high class, and those people we call the aristocracy. Now, I also told you that when the people started to colonize the rest of the world, there became a new class, and this class is called the merchant class. These people are rich, but that is only a small portion, like let's say maybe like 0.5% of all the normal people, right? And of course, their wealth is not on the same level as the lords and the ladies, right? The lords and the ladies are way more rich because they have kept all this wealth for many centuries. They've been building on this, right, with each other. Okay, so that is sort of what we are looking at in this time period. So the king is still the boss. He still rules the kingdom with the church, the lords and the ladies, and the aristocracy. We have a merchant class and we have the normal people. Okay, keep that in mind. So, the type of art that we are looking for is art for the aristocracy class. So, those are filthy, wealthy, rich people, right? Those people do not have to work. Those people spend most of their time going to parties with other aristocracy families. They do a lot of education, they play music, they play the harpsichord, they study about Greek and Roman things. They have a wonderful life, right? They have servants, and it's fantastic. They have a great life, right? They're very intelligent. They get a lot of education, right? So the art is only for this type of class. Okay, and that gives us some very interesting art. So now you know what the aristocracy is. So Rococo art is only for this type of class of people. And these people, they are, well, this painting is especially interesting because this painting is the best example that I can give you, because this one has pretty much everything in it that has to do with Rococo art. I personally am a great fan of Rococo art. I think it's super interesting stuff, right? So here we go. So if you take a look at this painting, you can see the title of this artwork is The Embarkation of Cythera. So that kind of gets cut off here, but it doesn't matter. So an embarkation means a trip or a travel to some place, right? So the island of Cythera is a magical island, an island from Greek mythology, right? So basically what is happening, you can see the people from the aristocracy who are wearing these really fancy clothes are going to go on a trip with this sailboat over here. You can see the mast here on the left, and are going to the island of Cythera. Now, the island of Cythera, ladies and gentlemen, is the island of love. So you can imagine what they're going to do there, right? Now, if you look at the clothes that the people are wearing, you can see those are not really clothes that one should wear when you go on a trip, right? Those are really impractical clothes to go onto a trip or go walking into the forest or something, right? So the reason why these people look like this is because they want to show off how well, yeah, how wealthy off they are, right? They're wearing beautiful fashion, beautiful clothes, right? That's one thing. And they look very glamorous and young, right? Now, another thing that you can see in this painting is that they are there's these little babies flying around, right? These babies with wings. Those are not angels, those things are called cherubs. And they have to do with love or sexy time, things like that, right? A very famous cherub, of course, you know, is Adonis. That's the little one that have like a little bow and arrow, and it shoot the arrow at two people, and then the two people fall in love, right? So these guys are going on a trip to a magical island of love, right? And they're showing off how wealthy and rich they are, right? So what I want you to think about is why would you have a painting like this in your house, right? Well, you would have a painting like this in your house to show off to other members of the aristocracy that you know a lot of things. For example, you know about Greek mythology because you know the island of Cythera, right? And that you have love over there. Now, you also know what cherubs are, and you also show off how wealthy you are because all the people have these beautiful clothes on. They're young, they're delightful, it's playful, right? So by showing these things, you show off that you're into playfulness, that you have knowledge over mythology. So it really shows that you are quite a cool person. I'll show you more examples. So this is another very famous painting from this time period. And this is also a painting that have quite some messages in it, right? So you can see in the middle we have a woman on a swing, a beautiful woman in her garden wearing beautiful clothes. Now you can see there's two men over here. There's a man on the right hand side and there's a man on the left hand side in the bushes, right? Now this painting, who do you think out of these two men that this lady is married to, right? So I would like you to think about it. Is she married to the man on the right hand side, or might she be married to the man on the left hand side? So take a second to think about that, then I will give you the answer. Good. Here we go. She is married to the man on the right hand side. Well, how do I know? Well, he is doing all the work. He is pulling the ropes on the swing. And what is she doing in the meantime? She is looking at her secret lover. Her lover, who she is having a secret affair with, is on the left in the bushes. And you can see as she swings, she opens up her legs and he's reaching out and looking at it, and it is very yeah, it's very raunchy, right? These paintings have very loose moral values. When you are thinking about the church or the people of the clergy, of course, it is it's one of the sins to cheat, of course, on your husband or on your wife, right? These paintings show us that the aristocracy class has very loose moral values. The rules that apply to everybody who is a good Christian do not necessarily apply to them because they are above the rest of society. They are a whole class above. Nothing really, you know, like affects them. They are in control. And there will be lots of examples like this, right? Now, over here on the left hand side, it's a little bit pixelated, I'm sorry, is a painting of a goddess. This is Diana, the goddess of hunting, right? Now, this is a portrait of a naked woman, and you can see there's all kinds of hunting tools around it. You can't really see, I'm sorry about that, and there's cherubs. Now, this is also something they would have hanging in their house, because they could say, look at this beautiful naked lady that I have hanging on my wall, which is great, and at the same time, look, I understand Greek mythology because she is the goddess of hunting, right? So that really is the main thing. So you get a lot of Greek mythology, you get a lot of naked women especially, you get a lot of flirtatious actions. That's really what you get in this type of art. It's very interesting. Now on the right bottom corner you see another secret affair painting, right? This one is called The Stolen Kiss. So you can see she's talking to all the other ladies, and they're all like in the little room on the right hand side, but she's sneaking out to, you know, have an affair, right? Now on the top right corner you get a more innocent type of Rococo painting. And this Rococo painting is a little bit more innocent, but I can still recognize this as being a Rococo painting because it has certain elements in it which you'll also be able to recognize as I show you more pictures, right? Now, of course, not every family is into having secret affairs or cheating on their wives and husbands. Some people might still, of course, be Christian or have like better moral values, right? But you can still see it's Rococo, and you can see it because of the following things. If you look at this family, you can see they are wearing beautiful, fantastic clothes, expensive, right? They're showing off that they are wealthy. You can see in their garden that they're wealthy, and you can see they have a servant who is giving them their, like, whatever they're drinking, tea or coffee or whatever. And what you can also see is that the use of colors are very nice and soft and dreamy. They use a lot of very nice pastel colors in this type of art, right? Good. Now, to understand a little bit more about this time period and about how France is running Europe in this time period, we have to look at this guy, King Louis number 14, right? So King Louis XIV is the greatest king that France has ever known. And he is going to make out of France the biggest superpower in Europe, right? So he is the king for 80 long years, right? Long time. And he makes France super rich and powerful. You can see in his clothes how rich he is. So take a look over here. Under his control, France basically captures all the lands in green, right? So those are all the French colonies in his time period. So you can see that is a lot. So all of the riches from these colonies flow back into France. They all flow back into his hands, right? So he is very wealthy. So what does he do with all his wealth? Well, he builds this palace over here. The Palace of Versailles, of course. He builds a palace, and he also invests a lot of it into creating armies, of course, to also capture more and more land, right? That is, of course, the goal. You want to keep on growing. So this is his palace, the Palace of Versailles. Look, it's humongous, right? So from here he controls basically the world that we know, right? Cool. So this is the inside over here on the right hand side. You can see super wealthy, right? Here on the left hand side you can see a map of it, right? And you can see the whole gardens that also belongs to the king over here, right? Now, the aristocracy class, the lords and the ladies, of course, are also rich, and they have been rich for a really long time, but of course they can never be as rich as the king, but they build houses or manors in a similar way as he does, right? So this is where the aristocracy spend their time, right? They have like all the little houses around the house here on the top left corner. You can see that's where all the servants live that work for them, right? These people do not have to do any work. People work on their land, people pay them taxes, right? They own everything around them, right? So you can see this is what the inside of the houses look like, and this is where they would have these paintings that I'm showing you, right? See, they have nice dinner parties. Now, when King Louis XIV dies, then we're gonna have a new king, which is be King Louis number 15. Now, when King Louis number 14 was the best king that France had ever seen, King Louis XV is gonna be the worst king that France has ever seen, and I'll explain to you why. He grew up in this palace. In fact, he never set foot anywhere outside of the palace grounds, right? So the only people he would get into contact with were people that were serving him. So he was super duper spoiled, right? Super spoiled. So he did not care really or understand anything about the world other than what they taught him, and he wasn't interested in learning anything about it, because as far as he was concerned, he was just the boss and whatever, right? Now, he was not interested in politics, he didn't understand how the world worked, but he was very interested in one specific thing. So what he was interested in was in having mistresses. So a mistress, ladies and gentlemen, in this time period, and still people have mistresses to this day, is let's say you come from the lower class, but you are very pretty, you're a very pretty woman, right? For example, or young girl. Then basically you can find somebody that is part of the aristocracy class or higher class, and then you basically become his mistress. So what happens is, for example, let's say I was a wealthy businessman, then I have a child and I have a wife, but my child and my wife, like, yeah, my wife is getting a little bit older. She always asks me to do all kinds of things. So what do? I find a nice young girl for myself, and then I buy an apartment, and then I say, okay, you can live in this apartment, and then I give her like allowance money, so I pay the rent for her and she can buy things. But then every once in a while I'll go over and then I'll sleep over there, and then of course I'll tell my wife, oh, I have a conference, I'm not there, so that is basically a mistress. Now, a mistress basically was a profession in this time. Now, how many mistresses do you think that King Louis XV had? Well, I will tell you. He had 100 mistresses living in his palace, right? 100. He had 100 mistresses. So you can imagine he spent a lot of time with his mistresses and really not thinking about how to steer his country, right? So that was not really all that great. Now, out of all these mistresses, there was one mistress who he really liked the most, and they really had a special bond. And these are all paintings over here of her, and her name is Madame Pompadour, right? And she became the most powerful woman in Western civilization, right? So she would spend a lot of time with him. They would have a lot of fun together. Of course, in the nighttime, he would spend a lot of time with all the other mistresses. But Madame Pompadour understands she was just a mistress, so that's the way it is, right? Now, she became super influential for fashion and also for art. Because if you wanted to become a famous painter, the best course of action was to go to the palace and ask Madame Pompadour if you could please make a painting of her, or you make a dress for her, or make a new wig for her, and then she would say, okay, you can do it, and then if she liked it, you would become famous overnight, and everybody wanted to have, want to hire you to make paintings of the aristocracy. So you can see these are all paintings of her. So you can see she's very beautiful, of course. Debatable, but whatever. Now, she was very concerned with being part of the high class, right? So you can see in these paintings, um, sometimes she's painted holding something in her hand, which is a book, as you can see. And this is not a accident, this is deliberate. So in order for everybody to understand that she was not only very beautiful, but she was also very smart and intelligent, she would have herself painted with a book. A lot of the people still in the lower class were not able to read or write, so by having paintings made of her showing a book, she showed off that she was also very smart, right? Okay, here we go. Now, if we go back to this picture over here, oops, this one, you can see that France has a lot of colonies in North America, basically Canada and part of like a big part of what we now call the United States, at least half, right? So they get a lot of resources from here. They get like a lot of grain and food and wood, right? That comes back to France, which they invest into the capital, of course, and which they also invest into building more armies to, invade more of the world, right? So basically, what happens is there is going to be word that the English are starting to build a massive army on the shores of Canada, right? And then, of course, this is happening, and then the king says, you know what, I'm really not that interested in North America. It doesn't really bother me, right? So he fails, although he's repeatedly warned, he fails to send an army to defend North America against the Brits or the English, right? So what will happen is, because he doesn't understand, basically they will lose all the colonies in North America. And because they lose all the colonies in North America to the English, that's why I'm speaking in English to you right now, otherwise I would still be speaking in French, right? Because then this country would be a French speaking country, right? Canada. But because they lose all this territory, basically France goes bankrupt overnight. So they have no more food coming in and no more wood and other things. So this is really, really, really terrible. So basically, France will run out of money, right? And that is not good at all, right? So there is no more money to fight all these wars that they're fighting. There is no more money to have all these elaborate parties that he's having. So it is really not that cool. Now, on top of that, there's a giant drought happening in France in the same time period, which means that there is not enough food for the normal people to eat, right? Now, I want to show you quickly this, because this is sort of the beginning of what's going to be called the French Revolution. And the French Revolution is going to happen in our next time period. But for now, I need you to sort of understand how we're going to continue from here, right? So I have made for you super quickly this, right? Okay, so the class that we have looks like this. Okay, so the monarch basically is on top of the civilization, that is the king. So him and everybody that works for him represent 0.5% of the total population of France, right? He owns 20% of all the land in France, and of course he does not have to pay any taxes, right? Now, underneath, society is divided into three different estates. The first estate, which is the clergy, the second estate, which is the aristocracy, the third estate, which is all the normal people, including the rich merchant class, right? Now, the first estate, the people of the church, is only 0.5% of all the population. They control 10% of the land and they don't have to pay any taxes. The second estate, the aristocracy, the one we're talking about, is 2% of the population. They own 30% of the land and they do not have to pay any taxes to anybody, right? The third estate, everybody else, is 97% of the population. They own 40% of the land. Well, that's only 0.5%. Those are the merchants, right? The rest of the people basically still are mainly farmers, to be honest, right? And they work on the land of the king, the church, the aristocracy, or on the merchant class land, right? Now they have to pay taxes. They have to pay taxes to the king, the clergy, and the aristocracy, right? So that is really, really not fun for them, right? Okay. So there's going to be a big, big revolution, right? So who do you think the revolution is going to be against, right? Well, I will answer that for you. The revolution is going to be against these people in top. So the French Revolution is going to be against the monarch. It's going to be against the first estate, which is the clergy. And it's going to be against the second estate, which is the aristocracy, right? So you need to explain those three groups, who they are, where they come from, basically, right? So the king is the monarch. Since the Middle Ages, they have been in power, together with the church or the people of the clergy, right? And the lords and the ladies who used to have like normal, like tiny castles, right? Who provided the army. Those people are the aristocracy, right? So that is what you need to explain. So I'll give you a second, you can take like screenshot or pause it so you understand, right? Okay. So when the king loses all his territories in North America and he is out of money, no more money to spend, he of course still has to spend money. So what does he do? He increases the taxes. So who is going to suffer from the increase of taxes? Well, only these people, right? Because the first and the second estate do not have to pay any taxes, right? So the normal people who do not own any land, who do not have any food really, because they have to get the food from the people they work for, they are starting to starve. And that is why we're going to have a revolution. Okay, we continue. So while everybody is starving and having a really, really difficult time, the aristocrats do not suffer at all. Why not? Well, they have wealth from generations on generations built on top of each other, right? So even though nobody has enough to eat, they are having a great time. They're spending time with the other aristocracy in their gardens, fantastic, looking all fancy. They're having book reading parties. They discuss philosophy, it's fantastic. They're having dances with other people. They have elaborate fashion. This is the time period of wigs, right? It gets really ridiculously overboard. This is like from a catalog where you could like hire somebody to create these beautiful wigs for you. This one has a ship in it, for example, right? So I'm going to show you lots and lots of examples now of Rococo art, right? So Rococo art is really interesting art, right? Sometimes it's super friendly. You can see in the top right corner of the top one, this is a nice family. It's an aristocratic family. How do we know? Well, you can see if you look inside, by how the house is decorated and the type of clothes that they're wearing, right? Then the one underneath. How do you recognize this one to be Rococo art? Well, simple. You can see this one because they are not working. They don't look like they worked a day in their life ever. They're having a good time. They're wearing super fancy clothes in their garden, right? Then another thing you can recognize it by is if they have loose moral values. So we're talking about cheating, we're talking about having sexual affairs, right? So things like that. Now, another theme that you have will be mythological Greek and Roman stories, mainly painted and lots of naked women in them. And these naked women are obviously the different goddesses, right? And that serves a dual purpose because not only can you say, oh, I'm so smart, I know about mythology, but also look what I have on my wall. I have some naked ladies on my wall, right? To impress your other aristocracy guests. See? Now, not everybody is interested in naked ladies on the wall, so you can see this is the family, but you can recognize the clothes, you can recognize the setting, and you can recognize the colors. See? Now, whenever you see a painting with a tiny baby with wings called a cherub, you're also talking about aristocracy art, almost always guaranteed. So I'll show you some examples, right? Here we go. So here is a nice painting. Whoops. This one, beautiful. This is a story where this woman, is a Greek mythology story, is made to be fallen in love with this bull, right? Beautiful painting. We have beautiful pastel colors. We have fancy clothes. We have a cherub, right? Must be here too. This is of course Hermes, the messenger of the gods. How do we know? Well, we can see he has his helmet and he has the little wings on his, like feet, heels. Here, cherubs, beautiful soft painting, right? I really like these paintings. Well, what are these girls doing over here? Are they just enjoying them, or is there more happening here? You never know. See? So these paintings are very well painted. They're very beautiful, I think, right? Here we go. So if it's soft, naked, babies, cherubs, then you're talking about what is happening over here. Why is he running away in the garden? I can only imagine, right? Now, the criticism about this time period later on is that this art doesn't fulfill any single purpose, only entertainment. Entertainment for the aristocracy, right? There is nothing in there to inspire you. It's not about becoming a better Christian. It's not about commemorating any war. None of that. It's just pure entertainment, right? And of course, while the aristocracy is being entertained by all these parties and this playfulness, the rest of the population is starving because they do not have enough food, right? So it is basically, yeah, it's nothing. It doesn't mean anything, but it means something to us now that there are people that just, don't care. None of the rules apply to them. They are above the rest of society. And that is what this art is all about, right? Of course, if you are a good Christian, you're not going to have something like this hanging on your wall, right? You cannot have something like that. Now, it becomes increasingly more and more sexual in nature. And I'm going to show you some examples. See? Here we go. It will slowly give you a time. Put this one in 2 times. See? If you will go to any art museum, you will now be able to say, oh yeah, I can tell this is Rococo art, See? It becomes more and more sinful in essence. See? Look. Rococo art. This is a Greek mythology story where Zeus wants to have a relationship with a woman, of course. Now he cannot come to Earth in his normal form. So he changed himself into a swan, and then he makes love to this woman. This is a Greek story, right? So of course, in this time period, you have to make a painting of this. And this is a very mild painting of this, and I'll show you a very good example. Here, look. I blocked it out because this is also Rococo. So Rococo is also slightly pornographic, to be honest. Okay. Now, Rococo time period is still a time period that in today's society is something we really look up to, right? So contemporary means new. So this is new Rococo. So a lot of television shows are still, or movies are still being made about this type of life, right? It's still super fascinating, right? But the reality is that only 2% of all the people in France ever were this wealthy or part of this class, right? In throughout the Middle Ages and everything. So here we go. So these ones are basically actresses, and they are wearing the type of clothes that are, Rococo clothes. So if you want to show off that you are high class, then you put on some clothes of this time period, right? So we still use all these symbols in fashion to this day and for commercials too, right? See? Of course, all the Disney princesses are also inspired for this, like you are like a normal woman and then you fall in love with a prince and then you can become part of this 2% of society, right? It's a dream. This dream is still sold to this day, right? It's also inspired all this type of stuff, right? Or these like plastic princesses or modern paintings, right? And then especially you have to think about the nice type of colors that they use, the soft pastelly colors. See, like this. These are paintings by Mark Ryden. I really like him. I have a book of him. It's very interesting paintings. See? Beautiful. Rococo. See? This is from the swing. Now you can see this is made by an African artist. This person doesn't have a hat, and that makes total sense because most of these people are going to actually lose their hats in the next time period, right? So to sum it up, Rococo art is just art to entertain only the aristocracy class. Normal rules do not apply to them, so they can have affairs, they can show off that they're rich, they can show off that they're intelligent, and that is all they care about, right? Okay, I will show you the next one. I will upload that one next. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I think aristocracy art is interesting. Thank you.